Welcome to Storytimer at Large. Michael Dean Klitch. Michael Dean Klitch was born on February 7th, 1959, to Joan Marie Smith Klitch and Richard Klitch. He had a large family with 3 sisters and a brother. The family lived on Cambridge Boulevard in Grandview Heights. That's a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. On Monday, June 28, 1971, 12-year-old Michael Dean Klitch left the house at around 2:10 p.m. to go play tennis at a nearby city park on Goodale Boulevard. After World War II, you know, it, America, a lot of soldiers and sailors, GIs, came back to America, and they really went about trying to improve their country as they were finally out of the Great Depression. The war was finally over, and so there were really great municipal efforts, building houses and factories and all those things took place. But also they kept in mind, like, okay, we need some city parks, we need some tennis courts, some pools. None of them grew up playing tennis and swimming in swimming pools, these kids of the Great Depression, but they wanted to make sure that the future in America, that the children to come would have a really nice country to call home. I hope that we'll see that kind of spirit again someday in this country. So Michael had gone out to the park. It's a few blocks away from his house. His mother, Joan, went to pick him up around 3:40 p.m., but she couldn't find Michael when she got there. One of his tennis balls was found there at the courts, though. I'm sure he had just a few balls and knew exactly which ones were his because he probably wrote his name on them in ink, and wanted to get those back because you just didn't have unlimited supplies of things in those days, especially as a child with a big family. Michael's mother went home after looking around, asking around, and she called around to friends. No one that they knew had seen Michael, though. She called the police. This was absolutely not like Michael at all, to wander off, to leave, to not be where he was supposed to be when she came to get him. Searches were launched. People at the courts were questioned, at the park were questioned, but no one had seen anything unusual. No one had reported anything. And this is daytime. This is it's not dark out. This is broad daylight, afternoon. 13 agonizing days would pass by while the family waited and hoped for news and searched. I'm sure they continued to drive around and look and ask around. On Sunday, July 11th, 1971, way across town. So Michael's home in Columbus is if you're looking at a map of Columbus, it's in the southwest corner of the city. His neighborhood is down there. In the north part of Columbus, north of the city proper, there's a couple of reservoirs, and Michael was found up in that area. So it's Sunday, July 11th. Mrs. Elaine Gowell of Rome, New York, was in Columbus visiting her grandfather, who lived on Africa Road. Elaine Gowell, her brother, and her brother's children were out picking berries in the woods. So it was summertime, so I'm sure blackberries, also known as black raspberries, were probably very plentiful. And so they're picking some of those. The 2 adults knew of an old quarry pond and decided to go there to skip stones like they had done when they were kids. So they walked back through the woods along what had been a road to the quarry, but now is more like a path. Things are a bit more overgrown. As they walked through the woods, the group passed by an old shed and they smelled the odor of decomposition. Elaine Gowell thought that a dead animal might be in the shed. She was curious enough that she opened the door. It took a while for her to figure out what exactly she was looking at. She saw something there in the dark, and as her eyes adjusted, she finally recognized human features, and she and the others hurried then to call the police. On the blog post about this, I have Google Earth photos and maps of that area, and the pond is still there. The little road to walk back to the pond is still there. The shed was about 2/10 of a mile off the main road. The nearest cross streets to that shed were Africa Road and Plum Roads. That's a long drive from Grandview Heights. Michael had not walked there. He had been abducted. Michael had been stabbed more than 10 times and set on fire. His tennis racket and his tennis shoes were identified by his family. His eyeglasses were also found at the scene. In the photo that I have here, he's not wearing his glasses yet, but they were that typical 60s style, 50s, 60s style eyeglasses. In the photo where he is wearing his eyeglasses, he looks quite a bit like Ernie from My Three Sons. That's what he reminded me of when I saw his photo. The eyeglasses were checked against Michael's prescription, his known prescription at his eye doctor, and they were found to be a match. The knife used was thought to be similar to a household butcher knife. So a larger type of knife someone would have used to be cooking with, cutting apart, chicken or something. 2 cans of lighter fluid were found in the area. The FBI was asked to help test the cans for fingerprints, but that didn't go anywhere. And also those, the fire that was set, they did feel that there was some sort of accelerant, but they did rule out lighter fluid. So I don't think those 2 cans were part of this at all. A fisherman in that area had called police with a tip about an old black car with 2 young men inside that he had seen driving around the area on the day Michael had disappeared from the tennis courts. Despite all the efforts in this investigation, Michael's case went cold, and it is still unsolved today. I lean toward a local killer or killers. They would have to know about that little lane off Africa Road that leads back to that shed near that quarry pond. I think maybe they were people, maybe it was, if the 2 young men in the black car are part of this, maybe they were just driving around that day looking for a victim. Maybe they have nothing to do with it at all. We don't know, though. But there are other Ohio suspects. Let's talk about one in particular. One suspect that I would suggest here as a possibility is a man named Joseph Norman Hill. And you can see his photograph on the blog post about this. Joseph Norman Hill lived 2 hours and 46 minutes away from Columbus in Boardman, Ohio in 1971. In 2023, though, it was announced that Joseph Norman Hill was responsible for the 1972 sexual assault and murder of a 12-year-old boy in Boardman, Ohio. And that boy's name was Brad Lee Bellino. In 1972, Joseph Hill drove a truck for a bottled water delivery service. I'm not sure if he was employed doing that same job in 1971 when Michael Dean Klitch was abducted and murdered. But it would be interesting to track down what he was doing on Monday, June 28, 1971. Could he have been in Columbus that day? It's possible. In 1978, Joseph Norman Hill packed up his family and moved all the way across the country to San Bernardino County, California. When he lived in California, he lived in 14 different residences there until his death from cancer in 2019. That's a lot of moving in one county. In the Youngstown, Boardman, Ohio area, where Joseph Norman Hill lived before, there were several other murders of boys throughout the 70s, prior to 1978. I'm going to talk about a few of them here. On December 3rd, 1970, 15-year-old Thomas Baird was found on Lake Park Road. Most of his clothing had been torn from his body. He had been violently beaten, but was still alive. He was transported to the hospital. Detectives were able to speak to him briefly and ask him if he knew who did this. He managed to answer yes, but was unable to give any more details before he died of his injuries. Another young boy in Springfield, Ohio, Marvin Lee King, in January of 1973, he was strangled and left in a field near Springfield, Ohio, not far from his home. He may not have been a victim of Joseph Hill, but the next young boy probably was. On August 15, 1974, James David Morgan disappeared from Akron, Ohio. His skeletal remains were found, with no sign of clothing, in a wooded area near Stowe, Ohio. That's northeast of Akron. Investigators were sure that he was a victim of foul play, but the cause of death was difficult to determine. On January 18, 1975, 12-year-old David Evans went missing. 6 days later, his frozen body was found at Market Street and US 224 in Boardman, Ohio. He was found on January 23, 1975, buried in a pile of snow in a shopping center parking lot. A lot of times when it's snowing all winter, they'll scrape all the snow off to the side and leave these big piles of snow in shopping center parking lots. And they pretty much stay there until springtime. But some shoppers there saw a shoe and a leg sticking out from under the snow, and they called police. David Evans had a large puncture wound found in his back. The spot where David Evans was found in that snowbank, or snow pile, was very close to where Brad Lee Bellino was found in 1972. He was found in a dumpster behind a business in that same shopping center. Investigations into each of these murders are still ongoing. Brad Lee Bellino is so far the only victim definitely connected through DNA to Joseph Norman Hill. I think in the future you may hear quite a bit more about him, because he did move to Southern California, and I don't think he stopped killing when he got to Southern California. If Joseph Norman Hill did not kill Michael Dean Klitch here in the photo, then who did? Is there someone out there who knows something? Could the two young men could the two young men in the old black car be connected? Michael Dean Klitch is on Find a Grave, but does not have a public resting place. His remains were cremated in lieu of burial. His case is still unsolved. Rest in peace, Michael. If you have information about the murder of Michael Dean Klitch, please submit a tip at the link that I'm going to post in the comments. It's the Ohio Attorney General's Unsolved Cold Case website. And hopefully, in the future, there may be some movement on this case. People sometimes they know things. They don't want to reveal what they know. They feel loyal to someone, or they feel worried that they'll get in trouble too. But over the years, situations change, people's attitudes change. They may have felt loyal once before, and they no longer feel that loyalty. They may have been afraid of a person and kept quiet out of fear, but as they get older, they may no longer feel that same fear anymore. Um, so you never know when tips will come in and a case can be solved. Thanks for listening to Storytimer at Large. Keep sharing the videos. I so appreciate that. And thank you all to all of you who subscribed. And if you're hitting that thumbs up button for justice, the more attention that these videos can get, the more likely we are to actually solve a case. You never know. But definitely, they have to get in front of the right person. They have to be brought to the attention of the right person who may have information that they didn't realize was important, or may have information that they have been keeping and they don't want to keep that information secret anymore. So, and sometimes people just assume that investigators already know it. They haven't submitted a tip because they think, oh, they already know that. They've got to already know that. Everybody was talking about that then. And so you never know when somebody will have a piece of information that actually investigators did not know that. So if you do have something that you want to talk to investigators about, it's very easy to use that, that link for the tips there. Thanks so much for listening again, and I hope that you're having a good day. And let's all support each other, give each other a little pat on the back, and take care of everybody out there. You know, kindness goes a long way.